There you go.
Okay, sweet. Very cool. Very cool. All right.
So how did everyone enjoy the last session? Did you guys gain a lot of stuff? Did you guys check out BookMine? Did you guys get a chance to use that? I noticed a lot of people actually using it, so I think that's good for all of us. Did any of you guys buy actually any books?
See. Bought 12 books today, says Chelsea. Karen says she used this morning. Steven says you watched half of this of yesterday. Nice. Very cool.
Yeah, that's right. It's a good reminder. We actually posted the replay on Joji's YouTube channel. So
yep.
Yeah.
Robert says it's excellent. Found a great book by McGraw-Hill. Nancy says not yet, but plan on it. 4 books. Someone says Robert says it's gated. Yeah. Okay. Very cool. All right. Well, Victor, should we get into it?
Let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna present my screen. We have a few slides, but a ton of Keepa graphs to look at. So
yeah, absolutely.
Excited about getting this kicked off. Let's go ahead and share my screen.
So yesterday we really jumped into the basics of Keepa, trying to figure out the intrinsic value of a book, and then also trying to pair how often and when it sells. Those are really probably the most important metrics you should look at. There's also other things that we'll touch on today called offer count, used offer count, which is essentially supply. So what you guys have figured out is what's the intrinsic value of a book, how often is it selling? Now we're going to throw in demand in there, or supply in there. Sorry, what's the supply? So we talked about demand. What's the supply? If you've taken any sort of economics classes, high school, college, you know that there's a very simple relationship between the two. Generally, if there's a lot more people selling something and there's higher supply, you should expect that the price you can sell the book for to be much lower. And then the other way is true. If you have a very, very low supply, but the demand is still there, you should be able to sell that book for definitely at intrinsic value or even above that. So we'll get into that with some of the Keepa examples as well. But you want to go down to the slide that we're on?
Yeah. So we're just recapping, right? So we kicked this off. Why books? We kind of told you guys the overall process here. Then we went into our prep centers that we use. We talked about the different types of sourcing methods. This is Joji's YouTube channel, our BookMine channel, and our Facebook page. Then we kind of opened a few Keepa charts. And then here are the Keepa examples here. So basically, if you want to see any of the books that we're about to look at, here they are on our slides. So basically, just kind of copy those down when you're interested. And we also made a buying process, right? So when you're buying a book, kind of how we discover or how do we decide what type of book this is, like the thought process that we use when we're buying books, right? So we look for a pattern, and if we find a pattern, what type of pattern is it? Is it a college pattern? Is it a high school pattern? Is it a holiday pattern? Or no discernible pattern, right? So if that's like an all year round book, kind of, it's a book that just has no specific pattern. It's just it sells all year. And then kind of a flow chart of is that trend repeating year after year? If it is, then it's definitely a book you would want to purchase. If it's not, well, then we probably, especially if it's a college book, you probably don't want to buy it. If it is continuing, then yes, you want to purchase that book. And so there's a kind of a flow chart that you guys can kind of look at and answer some questions from, and decide whether or not you will be interested in purchasing that book. And then we have down here the book run calculator. You also want to make sure that you can sell the book. And then there's a calculator on Amazon that you can check to see how profitable that book will be if you bought it at a certain price and you were expecting to sell it at a different price.
Oh, very good. I use SellerAmp for that. You guys don't need SellerAmp to do that. I like it just because it's nicer. It's right on the page. It's easy, but you could also use that link there, the profit analysis link. So that's the calculator on Amazon Seller Central, and that works. That's fine, right? We're talking about bare basics. What do you need to get started? Victor, you need a Keepa account. Like that's literally all you really need, which is $22 per month, and you could do all your sourcing with that. Everything else you can bootstrap, even repricing, you can do that manually. The thing though is that in the beginning, I think most people have, you have two resources. You got your capital and you've got your time. Most people in the beginning are going to have more time than they do have capital. So that's when you spend more of your time taking, uh, doing the repricing on your own. That's when you spend more time, making, going to that link, using the profit calculator on Amazon, Seller Central, like all these small things which take a little extra time. You do that in the beginning. As you start building up capital, then you can say, whoa, okay, I've got a little bit more money to play with. I've actually have less time to do all this stuff. That's when you can start leveraging your time or leveraging your capital and bringing back some of your time. So, a really good point there. What I really recommend also with this, everyone, is that dip your feet in all these different types of books. Right? You've got college books, high school books, holiday books, and all year round books. And I think you should try all of it in the beginning, because eventually you will want to narrow down on something and get really good at it. But you should at least try the main ways of sourcing, the main types of books you can source. You might be really good at just doing college textbooks. You might really be good at just high school books. You might say, you know what, trying to figure out how high the book is going to go from the previous year, like that's just too much for you to handle. And you might say, let's just do all year round books. So it's good to experiment with all of them. And the good news is that you can pretty easily experiment with all of them with Keepa or even with BookMine. But
and there's enough books out there, Joji, right? There's 95 million. So you can pick between these and still have a huge pool of books to source from. So it's not like, oh, well, just going into college books, you kind of really narrowed your market too much. There's so many books out there that each one of these patterns, each one of these ways to source, there's tons of books out there for that pattern.
Yeah, there's someone who actually commented on my YouTube channel from the video we did yesterday. And they said, so you're training your competition to do what you do. That sounds really stupid. And, it'd be easy for me to like slam them back with a comment. But the reality is that Victor and I are very, very small relative to the whole market. All of us here are actually very, very insignificant, very small relative to the whole market. I mean, there's 95+ million books at any one time. There's thousands of books on Amazon that you can flip. Even if I had all the money to buy the books, I wouldn't even want to spend all the time to buy the books. So, we definitely don't have that sort of scarcity mindset, which is why we're here trying to show you guys how to do it. And just know that there is also turnover. Like people decide they want to do this, they try it out, they don't end up wanting to do it. There's new people that come in. Just in the time that we started this, Victor, it's from 4:30 to 4:38 p.m. In the last 8 minutes, there's probably been a couple hundred books that just popped up on Amazon that are now actual like profitable books that you can source, right? So I'm not worried about you guys learning how to sell $100,000 worth of books on Amazon, because your guys' gain is not my loss, and you guys actually, what you guys do won't really affect much of all of what I do. Like when I even go sourcing now, and even having taught people the ways that I source, I find that almost all the time I go to buy the book, I can still buy it because no one else has bought it. So that just tells me if we've been able to show people how to do this, and we can still very easily find books, it means that there's not a scarcity problem. So just want to put that out there.
Another example here would be on BookMine, right? There's 2,900 books that get that are currently purchasable right now, and that's every hour. So like people have bought a lot of those books, and still yet another 2,900 books shows up the next hour. So there is so many books, so much opportunity. Me and Joji have been teaching how to buy and sell books, on Joji's YouTube channel, on my Facebook page, for years, right? I have almost 1,900 people on my Facebook page who have been doing this, and yet there's still enough opportunity for all of us. Like I don't even notice you're there when you're purchasing books. Like you can purchase books, and that's great. We can coexist without really being competitors. Really, like you can still sell your books. I can still sell mine. That it's a big enough market where we can all coexist and still make quite a bit of money.
Absolutely.
So,
okay, Steven is being funny in the chat. He said only 95 million books. That's it.
I know.
That's a lot of books. That's a lot of books out there. Right?
It is a lot of books.
That's good. All right, well, I think we're good to go next. Let's see what we got.
Yeah. So our next chart before we're gonna go over like what two more charts. This chart and one more, and then we're gonna start looking at some Keepa charts. So I think this is kind of fun. Some people have challenges looking at Keepa graphs, right? Because it's like they can't envision graph and things like that. But this is what we see when we look at a Keepa chart. We actually kind of see mountains, right? Where there's like a peak up here, and then there's like shoulders on each, like so like a college book has like a shoulder here on the left and the right, and then there's a peak where the top of the season is. So this is probably like August 16th if you had to like pick a date, right? So there's the shoulders and then top here. So when we're looking at a book, we're both looking at the shoulder and at the peak. What we're doing here at the shoulder is more than likely that's almost guaranteed we'll be able to sell it at the shoulder price, and at the peak price that's more of a, well, if we get it, it's a good bonus, but we're not trying to sell it. Like that's not like we're buying this with the only way we'd make money is if we sold it at the peak. That's a book you probably wouldn't want to purchase. You probably want to purchase the book and with the knowledge that you're probably going to sell it at the shoulder for sure. And if it sells at the peak, at the head price, well, then that's a really great bonus.
Yeah.
Got anything
icing on the cake.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
It's icing on the cake. And you can think of the analogy as also your head. I mean, so this is
Right.
literally my head. That's the spiking point, and then my shoulders. This is where you should be thinking about where to sell the book, because if you can be profitable selling it at the shoulder, then you're going to be super profitable if you can sell it at the high point. But again, the last thing you want to do is buy a book expecting to sell it for the peak, because the peak might not happen. But what is much more likely to happen is the shoulder. And often, in many cases, the shoulder in the next year might be the peak. So,
right. Exactly.
So it's just another layer of being being conservative, because the last thing we want you guys to do is to make decisions that you would regret later and end up not being able to make money or even lose money.
So, yeah. So the pattern over here, So the pattern over here on the right would be a high school book, right? There's just one major season, and that's the August textbook season, where it's just one huge peak there, and then it kind of like tapers off. On the left is more of a kind of a college textbook where there's both a January season and an August season. So right now it's kind of a great time to be purchasing college books, because we're in this lull right here, right? In kind of like below what both peaks are at. And this is a great time to be purchasing those type of books, because we're going to go back into August, which we're going to have another peak. So basically we buy down here and we try to sell, closer to these higher time peaks. And so that you now can see these two mountains. Now actually look at a graph, that same thing, right? So this is a high school book that I have been purchasing for years, and it's a great example of that type of mountain, right? Where there's a shoulder here and the shoulder on the right, and then there's a peak. So this book was selling at the time at the shoulder price around $200. It peaked around $400, and it was currently, when I took a snapshot of this, $105, right? So this was a great book where you could have bought this book at $105 and sold it for $200 easily, right? And it went up to $400. So it would be like, okay, a great bonus if you sold it even higher than that, but definitely kind of like know that you would sell it for at least $200 here. So that's kind of a lot of people have a wow moment once they kind of see what we see when we break it down in mountains.
Yeah. And there certainly will be books that do this that are not so high value. That's an amazing, that's a very, very expensive book. Most books usually don't, get that high, nor do, that book actually year round is very expensive as well. A lot of you will be buying books that the peak might be $40 or $50. The shoulder might be $35. And the little lull in the off season when we're below the shoulders might be $12, $15, something like that.
So, we're not trying to scare you. I just wanted to show you the example of a mountain.
Yeah,
right?
it's a really great example.
Yeah.
How do you know? By the way, just I'm thinking people know. So let me ask you guys in the chat. How do you guys know that this is a high school book and not a college book? By looking at the Keepa graph. So could you guys comment down below? Like, how do you guys know that this is high school and not college? What's the giveaway here? Just to see if people are starting to catch on to the seasons.
Yeah.
Oh, so someone says no idea. That's a question I always have. So David's right on the spot. There's only one mountain. Where's the two mountains at? There should be two mountains, right? There should be two mountains.
Exactly.
There's only one mountain. Right. No January peaks, is Gary. Exactly. So
generally, it looks like the one on the right over here, not the one on the left.
Yeah, the one on the left has two peaks. The one on the right. So this is a high school book. Yep.
Exactly.
Very good. All right, people are listening. People are learning. Let's do it.
Good job, guys. All right. So now we're going to start clicking on some just Keepa charts, right? And so if you guys were interested in any of these books, it's in the slides. So you can pick the books you want and buy those if you're interested in them. So, all right. So this is actually a college textbook that sells a ton, right? It has both a May season, an August season, a January season, and you can see that it has peaks both in the August and January season, and it kind of goes pretty high. So 145 is probably where we're at over here. We're probably at around 130 over here, and right now we're at 70, 78. So that's and then so one of the things me and Joji mentioned was also looking at the used offer count. So that's also a really important factor here when you're looking at the offer count. I usually like to look at where we are now versus where we were a year ago. So when it's at 57 here and then at 36, 37 or a year before, that is higher, but it's not substantially higher. So if it was like double that amount, I would start being concerned and more than likely probably would pass on this book. But the fact that it's not double right now, I'd still be interested in looking into this book and seeing if I can purchase this book. Like just on the use offer account alone, not doubling, I would still want to look into it.
Yeah.
What about you, Joji?
Yeah. One thing I also want to point out is so for those who are unfamiliar, the used offer count is actually not on the top graph. There's actually a second graph down below.
That's a good point.
So I know when you hover your cursor over all that stuff, there's tons of stuff there, right? But that bottom graph, there's only one black line. That used offer count represents the number of people who are listing that book for sale. And what's really important is that used offer count is not stock quantity. Those are two separate things. Stock quantity means how many total copies are there. That is not what that bottom graph is showing you. That bottom graph is showing you how many sellers are on the listing. Any one of those sellers could have one copy, they could have 3 copies, they could have 50 copies, they could have 1,000 copies. And so that's where actually digging into the Amazon listing and looking at what the stock quantities of each seller is comes in handy. But yeah, this is simply just the number of sellers. And we think of this as supply, Victor, right? This is the current supply. And really
That's
great, what Victor said is looking at today's offer count versus the same day 365 days ago, the same day last year, will give you a good snapshot of how the market has essentially changed. And the way that you can think about it in this case, the used offer count today is a little bit higher. Actually, it's not, it is significantly higher, but it's not like way higher. It is significantly higher. I think it's like 15 or 20 higher than it was in the year before. What you should expect, guys, is that the peak is not going to get that high this upcoming year because there's more supply. If there's more people listing the book for sale, remember, everyone is competing for the sales, and so they'll drive prices down. And so the way that you should think about the peaks and the shoulders of the next selling season is, okay, looking at what today's offer count is versus last year's offer count. If it's right around the same, you should probably expect to see a similar shoulder and peak season that's coming up. If let's say the offer count today is like significantly lower, like it's half or even less than what it was a year ago, you should actually expect that this season coming up is probably going to be equally as good, if not better. You might even have a higher peak. And then similarly, if you have today's offer count like double, triple, quadruple the offer count same day last year, then you should essentially think that book is probably not it might not have any peak at all. It might actually be way worse than it was previous year. So it's not an exact science. It's kind of just a general feel. Does that make sense, Victor?
It does. So the used offer count is important. It's one of our main factors when we're looking at a book. And there's a few of you maybe that don't know how to turn this on. So when you go to when you have a Keepa chart, you want to go down to more historical data, click on that, and then just click on the used offer count, and that's where you will get this used offer count just like this. And at exactly what Joji was saying, if the used offer count helps you predict whether or not you're going to have a similar season, a similar selling season as you did the year before. If you have almost identical used offer count as the year before, then you can kind of expect the trend to repeat. If it's double, then yeah, you're not going to get that. You're probably at the top, going to be at the shoulder, right? So on this particular book, we're not double, but we're slightly under double. So I wouldn't say we're going to get to 150 this year, right? We're probably going to get to about 135, right around $135. So at $77 and sell it at $135, there's a little bit of profit there, but it's not perfect, right? It's not a really great ROI on this book. And so it's up to you whether or not you're good with like $10 and $20 in profit off of a book. But it's still there. There's still some profit there. There's other books out there if you're trying to really conserve and buy books, say with 100% ROI. But it's a good book to kick us off.
Yeah, good question. So someone says, what user count would you consider as too many sellers? So again, we can look at, okay, this book did really well this last year. Today's offer count is a little bit under twice as high as it was last year. So what we're tending to think here is that probably this year's peak is going to be last year's shoulder. That's what we're probably thinking is going to happen. So last year's shoulder is right around 130. We're thinking this year's peak is probably going to be right around 130. And it's not a perfect science, right? If we fast forward time to August and we were to look at this book again, we probably are going to be somewhat close, but no one has a crystal ball. No one has any perfect way to predict what's going to happen. All you're doing is making an educated guess based upon historical evidence and historical data. But the past doesn't guarantee future results. But what is likely to happen is probably 7 out of 8 times you could be right. And the good thing with this is the margins are high enough that if you're right 7 or 8 out of 10 times, you're on the money side. You're winning. And you're not going to sell every book that you buy profitably because there's just so many unforeseen circumstances that can happen. Similarly, there's going to be some books where you thought you should buy for 15, sell for 40. You bought it for 15, sold for 60. So it goes both ways as well. And this question, what used offer count would you consider as too many sellers? It's different for every book, right? Because every book has a different amount of demand. If you look at this book, the sales rank gets so super, super low in the actual textbook season. And even when it's not textbook season, the sales rank is still under like 200,000 the whole time. So it's relative to what kind of book it is and how often it's selling. You could have a book that has an offer count with 100. There's 100 people selling the book and it's still going to do great. But then you could have another book that has an offer count of 20 and it's going to do terrible this year. So it all is relative to the amount of demand and also the supply. And it just comes with experience.
And so one of the things I look at is, and Joe, both of us look at, so the used offer count right now is hovering close to 60, right? And in before the January textbook season, it was also hovering right around 60, and it made it all the way down to 5, right? So that means that basically the whole used offer count, all the supply that was out there was purchased. So the fact that it's this high now is not something overly concerning because it had that same type of used offer count before and it's went down that low. So it's if for me a no would be on a book like this would be like if it's just sky high, like it's maybe I'd say for sure I would say no to it if it's like 4 times higher. More than likely 3 times, but 4 times definitely no, 3 times more than likely, and then 2 times I'm still probably interested in it, but I know I'm not going to get to the top of the price point anymore, the peak of the price anymore. I'm more than likely going to sell the book at the shoulder.
Yep. So summarize before we go on the next one. Today's offer count versus last year's offer count.
Yep.
And wherever you're at, that's where you make your decision about next year's peak, and that's where you make your prediction or your educated guess about next year's shoulders and peak. Okay,
that's right. All right, so really I just kind of picked these books randomly, so let's go to the next book and check that out. All right, so another looks like another college book, and it both has a August textbook season and a January textbook season. And we're gonna quickly look at the used offer count. We're at 36 and we're at 54, so again not double, so that's great. And then we're gonna look at the used price here. It's around $90, and over here again around $90. So okay, so we have $90. This is actually pretty good. There's both a $90 peak in August and in January. August the textbook season looks like it's more pronounced. There's tons more sales happening in August than in January, but both seasons are healthy. So the fact that this is both $90 and $90, and then this book is 48, and that the used offer count isn't that high isn't like twice the last year's number. This is actually a pretty good book and I would be interested in looking further into it. Like I would want to go and see if I could find a good copy of this book, because what I would do here is probably buy this book at $50 and try to sell it in the 90s.
Okay, I think we should layer. I think people are ready for it, Victor. I think we should layer one more aspect onto the Keepa graph, and you actually already have it there. It's actually those purple little diamonds called the used buy box price. So
Yeah.
if you're someone who's really new to selling books or just new to selling anything on Amazon, there is, and maybe you can bring it up right now. Can you just open that Amazon page just so we can show people what the buy box is and where to find
Sure.
it?
Sure.
Almost every Amazon listing for any product that's being sold will have something called the buy box. And Victor, can you just kind of show people where the buy box is?
Yeah, so it's right here, right?
Yeah.
So the buy box for this book right now is $78.54.
Right.
And we call it the buy box because it's literally you don't look at any other sellers, right? It's just down here, click on it and buy it,
Add to cart. So that's
right?
literally the
Yeah, add
box
a cart.
with the
Yeah,
buy it now button, the add to cart button. You
right,
can, I think there's even now an option where you can just click buy it now. Like you don't even have to add it to cart. Some people can just click buy it now. But
right.
there's going to be a new buy box and a used buy box. So there's going to be a buy box for somebody who wants to buy a new, and then a buy box for somebody who wants to buy a used. The buy box is really important because it represents the least amount of friction or the least amount of work somebody has to do to get this book shipped to them. And what Amazon has learned is that a lot of people like easy. So a lot of people will just come to a product listing, assume Amazon has their best interest at heart, that this is the best offer, and they'll just, they're just showing them the best book to buy, the best whatever product to buy, and they'll just click add to cart and they'll buy it. And the reason why this is important to know is that there almost always is some difference in price between the lowest price offered on Amazon for that product and the featured offer in the buy box. So if we could scroll back down to or if you go back to the Keepa chart of the book, maybe within Keepa, just so
Mhm.
that's a little bit
Yeah.
easier for people to view. All of those little purple/pink diamonds that you guys are seeing, that represents the lowest, or that actually represents what the buy box use price was at that point in time for the book's history. And so what you can see is that almost always that buy box use price is higher than the black line. Because remember, the black line represents the lowest offer on Amazon at that point in time. The pink line represents the buy box at that same period of time. And so you'll see there's always a little bit of a gap. We call that the prime bump or the prime gap because most of the time the person winning the buy box is a prime seller. Just simply due to the fact that it's more convenient for somebody to buy the book and get it shipped to them in 2 days if they're a Prime a member rather than have to wait a week or 2 weeks to get the book shipped to them. So, anyways, what's the point I'm trying to make here with the buy box price with the peak here, Victor?
Mhm. Is that because we're going to be FBA sellers, more than likely we'll be able to sell it at that higher price point. But when we purchase the book, we're not like saying the only way we'd make money is if we would sell it at that higher buy box price. It's more than likely what we would sell it for. So the fact that we would be able to buy this book for $50 and more than likely sell it for that FBA price over here at say $100 is mean it's really good. You're gonna probably make like $20-$30, $25 on this purchase, selling it at the FBA price.
Right. So we just want to show you that buy box price is there. Often the buy box price is higher than the use price.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, we're not going to make our purchasing decisions on what the buy box price is going to be. We're still going to make our purchasing decisions based upon the shoulder and then also the
That's right.
peak of what the lowest offer on Amazon was at that point in time. And we're thinking of, we're trying to sell for the shoulders profitably at the lowest use price, the head of the lowest use price, and then the buy box is all icing on the cake. That's all. Well, that's all the extra stuff there. That if you get, you're a little bit lucky to get. I mean, oftentimes you will get it, but it's the extra stuff there. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, and
It
then
does.
Chelsea, great comment. Can you read Chelsea's comment and then explain that, Victor?
I can't see them, so I'm
Okay,
gonna
she
just
says,
on the
okay,
screen.
so Chelsea, really good comment, said Amazon would be the ceiling. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Okay, yeah. So when we're looking at a book, right? We're looking at, first off, we're making sure we find the intrinsic value of the book, and then we're trying to figure out how much we want to sell the book for. When we're looking at our max price, the price that we wouldn't be able to sell above would be the Amazon price, right? Because Amazon can outsell us because Amazon offers the same shipping options we do, right? So if we can ship it in 2 days, so can Amazon. But also Amazon is offering it brand new. So we're offering a used books, and because of that, we're not going to be able to outprice them. Plus, they get the higher buy box anyway. So the fact that this book is at $144, we know that is the max price we would ever get for this book. More than likely, we'd probably sell underneath that price, probably in the 130, like $136, $139 is probably the very top of that book we would be able to sell it for on a book like this, because again, the Amazon price is the max price we'd be able to sell it a book for.
It's essentially the new buy box, and the used buy box will never be higher than the new buy box. So essentially, yeah, think about it logically. Always put yourself in the shoes of a customer. Brandon wants to buy this book. He can buy it in used condition or new condition. Would he want to buy it for $140 in new condition from Amazon, or buy it for $150 in used condition? That makes like absolutely no sense, right? That's not logical at all. So just always put yourself in the shoes of the customer, and a lot of times things will clear up if you do that. Okay, I think we did a good job here. Should we go on to the next book here?
Yeah, so we got some college examples, some Christmas examples, and some high school examples. So we'll just keep going on to another college example to show you that, because our first like few examples were pretty expensive books. Here's a $12 college book that actually has a really great August and September season. So normally, as you kind of saw the last two books, what we've seen was like a really great August season and a really great January season. But on this particular book, it doesn't have a really great January season, right? So when we kind of zoom out and see the whole year, maybe initially you would get kind of worried that there was a weaker January and a great August, right? So the next thing up when you see that is, let's go look at a year, more than a year, to see if this trend repeats, to see if this book has a really great August every year, and January's just always been a weaker season for this book. And that's true. When you kind of like look at 2 years of this book, you can see, okay, January is nowhere near as popular as the August textbook season. So the fact that the January season over here isn't as strong as the August season shouldn't really worry us. All right, so now that we've gotten that taken care of, the next thing we want to do is see how much we could sell this book for. Right, so we look over here in the August textbook season, where like in the 50s, and it looks like the used offer count is at 43, and at 29, again, it hasn't doubled, so that's good. And so more than likely you'd be able to buy this book for say $16 altogether shipped, and sell this book for right around $50, right around $50. So that's actually a really good deal. Buy at 16, sell for 50.
Yeah, the peak of that book is getting up to $60. So the shoulder would be high 40s probably there. High 40s up to 50. And it's not an exact science, guys. It's not like, we can argue over semantics, whether or not it's 48 or 50. But the idea is like, you're just looking for patterns that are repetitive. And Steven said, why did the January, February textbook season do worse this year relative to August, September? And so again, what Victor explained is, if you dig into the data and you look further back in the time, this book does very well August, September, and still does well in January and February, but not nearly as well. So again, your ability to recognize patterns is really what will set you apart from buying really good books versus buying books that maybe aren't that great. So yeah, it's a book you can pick up for about $16 right now.
And if you really dig into it, what you'll find, if you wanted to go look into this book even more, what happens is, this is a freshman, first semester type of book, right? So that's why there's a lot more demand there in August than in January. So this is very typical of that type of book. But how you find that, and how you kind of feel good that you would be able to purchase this type of book, is to look at that trend again in the years past, and notice that, January actually every year has a weaker January season than the August season, and that would calm my nerves there, and then I would still then be willing to purchase this book. And again, buying at 16, sell it in the high 40s, $50 range. It's a good flip.
Yeah. Good. So Chelsea had a good question. She said, would it be safe to say you always want to at least triple the amount you sell the book for relative to what you buy the book at? So like, let's say this book, you buy it for 16, you want to sell for triple, which is 45. Yeah, obviously if you do sell for 3x or 4x or 5x the purchase price, then you're becoming more and more conservative. But you also need to understand that you're also reducing the number of books you can buy when you do that, because the number of books truly on Amazon that you can buy now and at some later point sell for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6x the price, like as you get higher and higher and higher, the number of books in that category gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And on the other hand, as you get closer to only 2x the price to 1.5x the price to exactly the price, like it expands and gets wide open. So in the beginning, I would say put in a lot of capital number 2, which is your time. Put put a lot of your time into going through books that you think are going to be killer. Yeah, these are books that should sell for 3x the price. You're gonna definitely pass on books that you probably later on in your career will end up buying, because you realize that the ROI 50%, 60, 70% is still a really great return for online arbitrage. But yeah, I mean, you guys have two resources, you got capital and time. If you've got less capital right now, less money, you should be spending way more time being much more picky about the books you're buying. But once you start getting the hang of it, you start getting more capital, and you need to start leveraging your capital more, because you will get to a point where you have too much capital, and you've got just money sitting on the sides, and money sitting in the bank at 2 or 3% or 4%. I forget what interest rates are right now. Is not nearly as good as it's sitting in books that are going to make you 50%. So that's the way that we think about it.
Yeah, exactly. Any other questions?
Yeah, so Steven says, so buy this book now, let it get stranded, and wait for the price to grow. So he's essentially saying, will this book get a high pricing error? Will it just be sitting in our inventory? You want to tackle that one?
So, I mean, for a book that's in this much demand, it wouldn't get stranded. So, I mean, if you're going to try to sell, if you're pricing this book, say in the 60s, right? Yeah, there's a chance. But if you're pricing this book in the $40 to $50 range, it wouldn't get stranded at this point. I mean, we're not Amazon. There's always a shot that might happen. But the fact that the new price is at $52, the new price is at $67. If you price that book at $50 right now on Amazon, it wouldn't get stranded, because Amazon's selling it higher and the new price is higher than that. So this is not that type of book. There are other books out there that sell maybe once a month and stuff like that. And you happen to be one of the person this month that bought that book really dirt cheap. You started out you put the ceiling of that book much lower, and you have to wait for that price to restabilize at a higher price for you to sell that book. So there's a difference between a book that sells this much and a book that sells maybe once or twice a month. So yeah, in a book like this, I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah. Good question. Gary had a good question. So can we mention the nuances with min and max prices? So let's say this book, we said probably in the upper 40s or low 50s is what you'd be shooting at. So what are your max and min prices going to be? So eventually Victor and I obviously part ways in some areas, like in terms of tools that we use. The good news is that we're both very successful booksellers, and you could probably go either direction, right? There's a certain point where you've gone down the road far enough where you're doing successful stuff and know that if you start branching off a little bit, you're still overall going to be fine. I use Be Cool, which is a third-party repricing app. Victor uses the Amazon Seller Central repricing app. But essentially, with both of those, you can set min and max prices for your book's price to change, somewhere between those two values, the minimum price and the maximum price, and compete with other sellers on the listing. So Gary's asking, well, how do you price this book? Do I just say my min price is $49, my max price is $50? Do I say my min price is $37, my max is $60? Well, what I'd say is really try to hone into that shoulder price. And that's probably right around where you should be thinking about where you want the meat of that variation to be. So for a book like this, I think what's important to know is you also should make sure your min price is profitable. The only reason why you'd buy the book is if you think that even in a worst case scenario, you would still be profitable. So in this case, I'm thinking if you buy it for $16, Victor, I don't really see how this book doesn't sell for at least $40, right?
Right.
So for me, I might say, okay, let's put the min price at 40. Let's maybe put the max price right around that, maybe a little bit higher than what I think that shoulder price is going to be, maybe 52 or 53. It's not a perfect science. Victor might say he goes a little bit higher, a little bit lower. But the thing is, you should always be thinking about pricing the book so that the min price is profitable, the max price is profitable, but you kind of want to have more of a narrow range rather than a wider range, because the last thing you want to do is sell it super cheap, or also try to get such a high price that you don't sell the book. So Victor, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, really good points there, Joji. What also is in my mind is how many copies am I planning on having of this book? So on this book of buying at 16, I imagine there's quite a bit of copies right now I could buy for $16 and sell over here in the August textbook season. So let's just say I only have one. That would give me a lot of confidence that I definitely would sell the one, because like, do you see the used offer? I mean, the sales rank that's down here at 4, 5, 6,000. That's a book that's selling a ton, up to 100 times a day. And so, you are pretty, this book is in that much demand that whenever you price your book and whenever you become buy box eligible and you get the buy box, even for like a few minutes, you would sell that book, right? So it really depends also how many copies I have. If I have just one copy of that book, I'm going to try to like sell, say, in the higher 40s, say like 44, 46, would probably be my min price. And then my max price would be probably at the highest like buy box price that's up here. So like say $58 would probably be my buy max price. So like, 46 to 58, I would stick the price in there, and then in like say in the middle or the beginning of September, if I still had this book, I would come back and check what happened to it. Why has it sold yet? And then probably reprice that differently if that happens. But more than likely, pricing it at 46, sometime during the season, it's going to sell it for 46, and I won't have to look at it again. So pricing it at 46, and the max price at like 58. You do that once, and then just whenever the book sells sometime in August, you're good with it.
Yeah, and the important thing to note is you guys can come back to the listing and look at it however often you want. Like I generally have the mentality of let's buy profitable books. Let's buy profitable books. I'm going to set a realistic min and a realistic max price, and I just want to sell the book. I don't even really care where the book sells. Just sell somewhere in this range because it's profitable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more worried about getting more and more and more books and buying just getting more and more really, really good books under my belt so that they're available for sale. But yeah, you could always come back and, maybe the first week through the season, you can come back to all the books that haven't sold, and then you can adjust your prices. Maybe 2 weeks in the season, you can do the same thing. One thing that you could do when you come back to look at the book is look at what the offer count is at relative to last year at that point in time as well. So always coming back to what's today's supply versus the same supply last year. And let's say the supply, like let's say we're right about to get into the season, Victor, right for kids to go back to college. It's get a start. The frenzy's about to happen. Let's say the offer count is like half of what it was at the same point in time last year. What are you thinking about your price then?
That's definitely an awesome thing. So you can kind of see this happening here, right? Where it goes to 23 and it just starts diving. If you still have the book when it's diving like that, that's a really good indication that this book is about to peak. Like it's about to spike even higher. Like Amazon knows that. Amazon can read this data. So can your competitors. And everybody knows that this book is about to go much higher in price because the used offer count is just dropping in numbers. And so if you're able to see that and you have that book with you and you have the time, it's good to reprice that book higher because the book is going to go higher.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Chelsea has a good question. How can you tell how many copies are selling to figure out the 5% rule, the one that Victor has talked about? So I think she's talking about how do you go about determining the number of copies? So like maybe you can give us an example of this book here. Would you buy 50 copies of this book, 1,000 copies of this book, 1 copy of this book, 3 copies of this book?
And it's good. I've said in the past to only buy about 5% of the market, right? Because you don't want to own the market. You want to go wide instead of deep, because there's just so many books out there. We went to just 3 of them, and all 3 are actually purchasable now that you could buy and sell. And you can see on the top of my screen here, we have tons of Keepa charts. All these books are purchasable now. So it's better to buy wide instead of deep. And so I'm in the mindset of only buying up to 5% of the market. And I get this question a lot. How do I figure out 5%? And it's not, and just like we've talked about other things, it's not an exact science. It's what you have to do is kind of look at the sales rank that happened during this time period and kind of do your best guess, right? And so the fact that this used offer, the sales rank that's just so low for that long, this book sells a ton. Like every day is selling. When it say it's under a 10,000 rank, that book is definitely selling, close to 100 times a day. So you just think of every day it's selling 100 times every single day, all through August and September. This book sells more than we probably have money for. So in a book like this, I would easily buy this book, at least like 15, 20 copies of it. I would easily feel comfortable doing that with the type of capital I have. If you guys are just starting out, 1 or 2 copies, that's great. Buy them at 46 and buy them at 16 and sell them at 46. That's perfect. But these are unique books. This is just a book that sells a ton, and this is a book I wouldn't have issue with selling that, buying that many copies.
Yeah, let's say so that going wide rather than deep, it just means
Yeah.
we'd rather have you buy more books and fewer copies of them than buy fewer books and a lot more of them. So let's say you're only able to realistically buy 100 college textbooks this year. I'd rather you buy
Mhm.
100 different college book titles and buy one of them because you'll learn
Yep.
so much more from that than let's
Yep.
say you only buy 20 different college titles and buy 5 copies of each of them. As you guys realize that the strategy actually works and the model works and you guys learn from your experiences and you get better, then yeah, then buying 15 copies of this book is actually not going deep because you always got to think about it relative to what your capital is and your purchasing power is.
Hmm.
Somebody buying 2 or 3 copies of this could be considered going deep because there's not really too much capital. They should spread it more thinly and they should actually have maybe a bought just 1 copy of 30 different types of books. But on the same hand, I mean, a lot of you here probably will eventually get to the point a couple years down the road where buying 10 copies of this is actually still considered going wide rather than deep. So hopefully that makes sense. It's all dependent on your current capital to spend. Dale
And
has
that's
a
a
good
good point,
question of,
Joji.
yeah,
I mean, the capital that I have buying 10 copies of this is going wide, right? Because
it's going
I buy
wide.
10 copies of lots of books. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And so for a lot of people, going 10 copies is going deep. So it
yeah.
just depends on, it's all relative to how much money you have to spend at that period of time. Okay. Let's see. So Brandon says, this is the most I've understood about textbooks. Thanks, guys. Absolutely, Brandon. I'm glad that you're soaking it
Let's
in.
go. Yep.
Gil says he bought a book that has a high pricing error. It has 0 used offers. The high pricing error does not make sense. And this is a question we get all the time, high pricing errors. So that's a tough one there, Dale, because if there's no used offer count, if there's no used offers on the listing, Amazon doesn't really have much data to play with. And that book might not even have had an offer on that listing for a period of time. So that book could just sit there and high pricing it for a long period of time. And so there's a lot of strategies. There's literally an entire hour class we could probably do on high pricing here. If you guys are going more of the seasonal book route, you're going more of like college, high school textbook, you don't really need to worry about that as much because there's way more sales volume, sales velocity. But you definitely can find books that are more obscure or rarer where there's fewer copies available. And so therefore prices can really change in a way that it makes it so Amazon doesn't let you list a book at a certain price. And so in this case, Dale, what would I do in that case? I would probably let it sit for a couple months in inventory, realizing that I bought an asset. This asset isn't going to go down in value, right? Because we're only
Right.
trying to buy assets, right? We're only trying to spend our money on things that are worth more than the money we put into them. So we're buying things undervalued, right? That's the definition of it. So
It's a great way to think of it.
yeah, so
Yep.
I'm thinking of it as an investment deal. It's like, okay, so I bought this book that is an asset, bought it for less than what it's actually worth. If I let it sit there for a couple months, yeah, it sucks. I could have turned it into money, and I could have sold it and turned it into money that I could have then bought more books. But it's not really hurting me very much to let it sit there for a couple months. If a couple months go by, they still won't let you list it at a price, then probably what you'll need to do is get it returned to yourself, and then you're probably going to want to either list it in collectible condition, send it back in and try to sell it that way. If you're really the only offer on the listing, then you wouldn't be in the buy box per se, but you'd be clearly the only person on the listing. So someone could easily find it if they're looking for the book. Or you might just need to wait. You might have a book that just has to sit on your shelf for 6 months. But again, it's an asset. It's something that is going to hold more value than the money put into it. So you're not going to lose money by letting it sit there. At least in the sense that you're not going to get less money back than what you spent on it. So the good news is that high pricing errors happen. They tend to happen much more frequently on longer tail, which means books that sell less frequently. These are books that sell very, very, very frequently. You're not going to have to deal with that. But really good question. Gary says, if you saw a prime offer for a $50 book for $5, but the seller has a feedback of 65% with 100% feedback, what would your thought process be for this and also for others with low feedback? Okay, so let's say you have a prime offer so I think if I'm understanding correctly, there's a book that potentially you think you could sell for $50 that you could maybe pick up for $5 now, and the seller has feedback of 65%. Would we buy that? So you want to go for that, Victor? Would you ever buy a book from anyone who has under 65, under 75, under 80? Like, what's your buying process with feedback?
Yeah, so if it's a really, really amazing deal, I still would turn down any 50, 60, 70 because like now we're talking about my time, right? And the prep center's time, right? Because more than likely what's going to happen is I'm going to buy that book. It's not going to be the same book. It's going to be half that book. It's going to be like a huge amount of water damage, missing pages to it. and all it's going to happen is my prep center is going to tell me, hey, this book is a problem book, and then I'm going to have to do a return on it. So I'm having to like fight that off, right? So more than likely, if it's just a killer deal, I'm willing to look into, like, say in the 80s of that seller. So if that seller's in the 80 feedback range, then if it's like just an amazing deal, okay, well then, it's probably still going to be a waste of time, but let's try it out, because the value here is just overweighted on profitable, right, at that point.
Yeah.
But
The
more than
better the
likely,
deal.
go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. The better for me, the better the deal, the more likely it is I'm likely to try it out. If there's
Yeah.
a book that, let's say it's a good deal, but then the person got terrible feedback, well, I'm gonna get a pass because they got terrible feedback. If it's an
Right.
amazing deal and they've got terrible feedback, which I would say is 65, 75%, I'd probably still take a chance on it because it's a numbers game, Gary. Yeah. I mean, if we bought that same book 10 times from 10 different sellers with the same feedback, how many out of those 10 times do I perceive I'm actually going to get the book that I need? Maybe 6 out of 10 times, 7 out of
Right.
10 times. But for me, the potential gain of that book is so much greater than what I might potentially lose from that book that it makes sense for me to do it. So it's always a numbers game. There's never like 100% of books you buy you're going to be able to sell. Just like it's not like 100% of books you buy are going to come in the actual stated condition. So for me, it's just, yeah, I would probably do it. Do I get burned on it sometimes? Yeah. Do I hopefully make out better in most cases? Probably. And so that's the way that I would think about it. And it's also important to note that there is no one right way. Everyone has a different risk profile. Everyone has a different perception of what they think is reasonable versus what's risky. And I'm not you, Gary. You're not me. I'm not Victor. Victor's not me. Brandon's not me. I'm not Brandon. Maggie's not Brandon. Brandon's not Maggie. So
Yeah.
everyone has a
Yeah.
different set of rules which you operate by. And so I would take everything that Victor and I say with a grain of salt. We're doing what works for us. We don't know if what we're doing will necessarily work for you because you might have different preferences. Might have different resources. So all we can shed light on is our experiences. And in this case, if there's a book that I think I can sell for 50 and it's $5 and that person got 65%, boom, I'm pulling the trigger. I'm buying the book for $5 because 6 out of 10 times probably is going to be the book that I want to buy. And the amount of gain on that book, 6 out of 10 times would be enough for me to for me to justify the risk. But other people might not do that. You can see people in the comments said, I'd run, I wouldn't buy it, keep your money. That's not a wrong decision. That is the right decision for that person. And so that's, this is the right decision for me. So I hope that makes sense.
It does.
Okay. Robert, really great question. As a new seller with zero feedback. So Robert just signed up, listing books. He has zero feedback, Victor. Should he price lower to generate sales?
Well, the main thing you got to do is make sure to see if you're a buy box eligible, right? I think that's probably your main thing you got to like go look for to see if you are. If you are, then you can try to like match all the other FBA prices. If you are, if you aren't, right, you're just a brand new seller, you haven't got any feedback, and say you sold like maybe 10 books altogether. Then what you want to do is try to be the lowest FBA price seller until you get some consistent sales and sending those to the customer back and forth like that. Then you'll win the buy box and you won't necessarily have to compete for the lowest price. Then you can kind of match the price more. So yeah, that's more of how new of a seller are you? And once you get the buy box, it's a different type of strategy than before you get the buy box.
Yeah, Emily, great question. How do we become buy box eligible? It's taking me a while to get there. I don't have any reviews yet. Yeah, we're not gonna lie to you. It's gonna take a long time. It might take, and everyone's different. It's not an exact science. Amazon doesn't publish, do X, Y, and Z, you're buy box eligible. What you need to do is essentially show Amazon that you're a trustworthy seller, that customers are happy with your products, and they're not causing Amazon issues at a higher rate than other sellers are. And once they've deemed that there's enough selling history where you're able to satisfy customers and you're not making problems, then they'll turn on that little feature for you that you're buy box eligible. For some people, it's a month. Some people, it's 3 months. Some people, it's 6 months. What I will say is most of the data points show that the more you sell, the more likely it is that you're going to get the buy box. And so that's difficult because if you don't get the buy box, it is harder to sell books because you're not the featured offer on a lot of your listings. But what we will say is that once you do become buy box eligible, you can shout for the I don't know, you can shout with glory because it is way easier to sell books. One recommendation that I would have is if you have the ability to find books in your local area, um, and find them for super cheap, or you can sell those books at a significantly discounted price, you will definitely increase the number of sales that you have. And that will probably shorten the amount of time it takes for you to become buy box eligible. But ultimately, if you are, again, following the strategy of buying undervalued books and the books are actually undervalued, then even at the lowest used price, which is that black line, you being the lowest offer available, you should still be able to get sales, even though you might not be in the buy box. And going back to, if you can find books in your local area, like if you can find books that have great sales ranks that maybe only sell for 25 or 35 bucks, but you can offer them for like a heavily reduced price, people are going to buy those copies because like, oh, this is a great deal. This is a $25 book I can buy for 15 bucks. That's a way that you can kind of forego some of your profits if you're doing some of that local sourcing to actually try to get more sales and try to start winning the buy box. But hang in there. It might take a few months, 4 or 5 months to get there, but when you get there, it's going to be well worth it. So just hold the course. Hold the course.
Yeah, I would like. I mean, it's the same thing. Basically, consistent, frequent sells will get you there, right?
Yeah.
And just like 1 to 3 months. Sometimes, if you're selling like say once or twice a week, that's going to take you more than 3 months to get buy box eligible. But if you're starting to sell more than that, yeah, you can probably get it between 1 and 3 months.
Yeah. The more books you send to Amazon that are
Mhm.
great books, the more of
Yeah.
those books that will sell. The more of those books that will sell, the greater the likelihood that you'll get buy box eligible sooner. So
Cool.
if you're literally just dipping your toes in, I'm sending one shipment of 20 books in Amazon, and then you're gonna wait 3 months. You're probably not gonna be buy box eligible in 3 months. But if you're like Brandon over here, who I know is gonna take action, and you're sending in 20 books a week, in
Yeah.
3 months he's gonna have a lot of books there, and he's
Right.
probably gonna be buy box eligible. So it comes down to how much do you trust what we're telling you is actually true, and how much are you actually willing to put both feet in? The people who put both feet in are going to be the people who get buy box eligible quicker, and they're going to be like, wow, this really works. With that said, again, none of your decisions are wrong, right? Your decisions are right for you. Everyone's decisions are right for them in their scenario. So we're not here to say that what you're doing is wrong or right. It comes down to what your preferences are and what makes sense to you. So we spent a lot of time on this, but I think there's a lot of value
Yeah.
here, Victor. So
No, yeah, no, it definitely is because I mean, all books kind of look like. I mean, all books have a Keepa chart, and so it's good to kind of explain what the Keepa chart is and what we see in it and how would we proceed when we see a Keepa chart like this. I think that was great.
can I have a request, Victor? So we're
Yeah.
about 5:30. We got about 30
Yeah.
minutes left. We've looked at college books. Can we look at some other types of books, maybe high school books or Christmas books? You can choose, but at the end of the day, there's only so much again that we can show everyone in this short period of time. But remember the BookMine YouTube channel. I'll go ahead and link in the description.
Yes.
We're really giving you guys a free BookMine Keepa Academy. So there's already like 5 videos on there, and there's many videos coming down the pipeline that are already filmed. We're just waiting to get them edited by our editor. So if you guys really like what we're teaching you here, if you watch the BookMine Academy videos on the BookMine YouTube channel, that's going to help you a lot. Okay, go for it, Victor.
All right, so we just kind of clicked on, which by the way, all the books that are up here on my keep it on my tabs up here are in our slides, so you can copy those down. The vast majority of those books are purchasable today, so go in there, look at them, see if you're interested in purchasing those. And I mean, I think there's like 25 books in there, and each one of those are definitely viable now. And buy those books and send those in, and you'll start off being a successful bookseller. But yeah, let's go into this one, our first Christmas book. And this is a book which completely different amount of demand, right? This is a completely different book than the books we were just seeing. You can see, we can actually see how many sales are happening right here, right? So there's one sale in March, and then one sale in April. Looks like one sale maybe in May, no sales in June, one sale in July. So each one of these like green drops are heartbeats, are sells, right? So you can see that this book, it really isn't selling when it's not Christmas, right? So, and that's how we can tell it's a Christmas book, besides the title, is that it has a ton of demand here in November and December. And the used offer count goes from like 14 down to 4, well, down to 3, down to 2 actually right before Christmas. So this is a pretty cool Christmas book that has, when we see the 1 year, we get pretty excited about it. We want to go look at every year to see if that trend repeats, and it does. Every year right around Christmas, the book spikes. So that's actually a really good sign there. The used offer count is higher than it was before. We're at 17 now, and before it was like 0. There was just none. So the next thing we want to do is to see if that is the highest used offer count ever or something, and it's not. There was other periods where it was much higher, and the price still spiked. So I wouldn't necessarily worry so much that the used offer count is higher than when it was in the years past. The fact that this book is right around like $7, probably altogether around $11 shipped, and last year was selling in the 30s easily, $38 here and up to $40. This is a book that I wouldn't buy 10, 20, 30 copies of. I'd probably buy one copy of this book, and sometime this season. It doesn't necessarily even have to be now, right? Because I do think it's going to go even lower, right? I think it's probably going to get into the $4 to $5 range, which then altogether would be $9 shipped. So $9 shipped and sell it in the like mid 30s is probably the game plan here. And again, I would only buy one copy of this book because again, there's the demand here is nowhere near what the demand of those other college books are, and we just happen to pick a book that looks like this. So this would also be a good example of where you could get a high price there, right? Where you would like buy this book, say at 11, and then you would try to sell it for 40. You would have to wait some months until the sale started happening before you would be able to then actually realistically price that book in the 40, or like Amazon would even let you sell it for $40. So it's one of these books that you buy for 10 or 11, probably you'll be able to sell it. We're probably able to list it in the 30s right now. But if you were trying to sell it even higher than that, you would probably have to wait until November or December timeframe to actually get your book listed without a high price there. So it's a really great Christmas book. It's a completely different book than we just looked at, but it doesn't mean that this isn't a book I would be interested in. I would definitely be interested in.
Yeah, one pro Keepa tip here for you guys as well is you'll see on this Keepa graph, all of the used prices are like even at the peak, they take up like the bottom 30% of the actual graph. And so what you guys will actually notice if you take a look here is that blue line, the new price, it looks like in December, late December, there, Victor, it spiked. What did it spike up to?
Pretty high up there. I can't get it. 175, 175. Yeah.
So what that's doing to the graph is because Keepa needs to show that data because you want to see the new price, it's stretching the graph and making it much harder to see the used price over time. So Victor so pro tip here, if you guys kind of want to get a little bit better of a snapshot of the used price, click that new filter off and watch how the used price kind of now populates the graph a little bit more. It makes it a little bit easier for you guys to see, the bottoms and the tops. And same thing with the buy box there. See, Victor, the buy box got up to, I think in January there, after the season, got up to, what was it, like 56?
56, yeah.
So if you get rid of the buy box use price, watch how it even will zoom in a little bit closer for you guys here. Watch. So now it's a little bit better. So now you can kind of see the use price. And if you now look at all of this book's historical data, Victor, all 4,600 days in the bottom right, you can now get a better snapshot of, okay, how high do we see we can go? So anyways, that's just a little bit of a pro Keepa tip that's going to help you. That's something that I do all the time. Anyways, that was just worth mentioning. Okay. Gary says, what is the shoulder amount on this graph?
So it's a book like this. There isn't very much shoulders because there's just not a ton amount of data here, but we're definitely probably right around $26 to $30 is probably where we would be interested in. Like I would probably sell that book at. And again, that's why I think the price right now is definitely purchasable, and you still make some money from it. But I do think we're going to get even lower than that. And then this would be a book I'd probably want to my min price would probably be in the $28 range, and probably try to up to maybe $38 would be my max price.
Yep. Steven says, is Amazon on this book? He said Amazon isn't on this. So how could we easily tell that Amazon's not on this?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, first off, there's no Amazon button over here, right? So because Amazon's on it, but plus there's no, Amazon's color would be here, right? Amazon's not on this listing at all. So when Amazon is on a listing, you'll see that it's actually back colored by this. Some people say it's orange. Some people say it's peach. Yeah.
So
Tons
the
of
important
different
thing to
thoughts
note is
here, but
that
yeah.
if you look at this Keepa graph, Steven, you'll see that on the right-hand side where you have all of your filters that you can toggle on
Yeah.
and off, you actually see Amazon as an option. And if you go over to the other listing, Victor, why is Amazon not an option on that other book?
Oh, because it's a really old book.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, it's
I
just
actually
that
lost where it is.
lost words. Let's see. I'll
But
help you find it, or I'll wait for you to find it.
yeah.
Essentially, the reason why. So here's an. I guess that example would work as well. But anyways, the reason why that option is not available on the listing we're looking at is Amazon has never historically been on that listing. So Keepa only will show you the data you need to show. There's no reason for them to have an Amazon toggle button if Amazon's never been on that listing. So, for example, this book that Victor's currently looking at, you can see there is some shading of orange. That's why, even though Amazon is not currently selling this book and it's not currently on the listing, there's still that toggle available because at some point in the past, Amazon was on the listing. And so, if you want Keep It to show
Yeah,
you that data, they can now have the ability to show you the data.
exactly.
Okay.
So all right, so we looked at a few
Joji
Christmas,
shirt
we
color
looked
here.
at one Christmas book. Do you want to what happened?
They said Joji's shirt color is Amazon. I'm representing Amazon. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Shaded in. Yeah, we can look at another Christmas book and then yeah. So why
Yeah,
don't we
then
do
we'll
it?
look at the high school book, and then I think that I think that's good. We really cover a lot. We really covered a lot of information here in
All right.
in right now a little over an hour. So here's another Christmas book. Actually, most of its sales happen at a lower price point. So you see this book here where it's like, say, like it's selling over here when it's 11, 15, $25. It sold a few times at 25, and then when it started getting much higher, you can see that the sales stopped or slowed down quite a bit compared to where it was lower. So it's something I take note of, that most of its sales were when it's lower. There's a few sales when it's higher and when it's like in the $40 range. So that's not really guaranteed that $40 to $50 range, because it really only sold once at that $50 range. Most of the time it was at much lower price point. So a book like this, although it looks great because it peaked that high, it's not a book that I would say that I would dependably sell in the $50 range. It would be more of a this is a risk book for me. If I was to buy it for 10 and sell it for 30, there's a chance, right? Because there's a few sales here and there, but not initially what it looks like. Because initially you look at this book, oh, wow, it went for 58. I can definitely sell it for 58 or even 50. More than likely, you'd probably end up selling it in right around $30.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point there.
Yeah.
All right.
So all right. So we got another Christmas book again. These are just great books to buy and flip. This is a book that you'd probably want to buy a little lower than this. It has gone lower than that. We're like it's at $2 plus $4 shipping, so around $6 is probably where you want to be, $6-7, and sell this book probably right around $26-27 shipped. So all right, so we got some of those. Let's look at now a few high school books. Joji, how does that
Yep.
sound?
Yeah, and really quick, I know this sounds simple, but everyone in the chat, just to make sure you guys are still engaged, so stay on this, keep listening. How do you guys know that this is a Christmas book, by the way? What's the dead giveaway that this is a Christmas book? So if you guys could put it, so looking at the Keepa graph, what's the dead giveaway? Because it says Uncle Vova's tree, so I mean, you could probably
Yeah.
guess, oh, that you can look at the picture, oh, that looks like a Christmas tree, but what's the dead giveaway on the Keepa graph? That this is clearly not a college textbook, not a high school book. Okay. Good. So there's a lot of really interesting things people say here. So there's people that say a ton of sales in December. So they're talking about sales
Yeah.
rank. But then
Yeah.
also people
Yeah.
say offer count dropping November, December. That's huge.
Ooh,
That's good.
that is
Someone says
huge.
December mountain. That's also big. Someone says
Yep.
peaks
Yep.
November. So these
Yep.
are all great great answers there. Okay. So
Yeah.
you guys are
All
starting to
good
get it.
points.
You guys
Yep.
are starting to get it. Let's go. Let's go. All right. Let's go to the high school books.
All right. So let's make sure. Yeah. So here's a book that performs like a high school book. This book actually isn't a high school book, but when you see this type of demand that happens once a year like that, I just classify it more as a high school book. But it's what I've spotted is a pattern, right? You can spot that there's tons of demand here, but not much anywhere else. And so what I would want to do is zoom out past that point to see if it's repeated again, or if it's done this in the past. And it has. It's done it in 2022 and 2023. So the fact that this book is what, well, it's $50 new, and it was selling quite a bit at $50, and now it's at $9. This would be a good book to buy at $9 and sell maybe underneath the new price, probably right around $46 to $50. So not necessarily a high school book, but it has a high school book pattern.
Yeah.
All right, so
cool.
Now this is the high school book. And one of the things you can see in the picture is it says AP edition. That's definitely a giveaway that it is a high school book. Besides that, there's tons of sales rank drops happening in June, July, August, and September of this book. And again, the price also spikes during this period. So it's also another great point. So we're the book right now is at $56, probably $60 shipped. And this last year it was selling what right around $130, $140. So yeah, buy this at 60, sell it for 130 is pretty easy here. What do you think, Joji?
Yep, absolutely. I would agree. Good book. AP. So for those of you who
I'll go
missed that,
for it.
AP means advanced placement. So if you've been out
Mhm.
of school for a while or you're not sure what AP is, maybe your high school never offered AP. AP advanced placement courses are essentially college level courses you can take in high school. So any book that says like AP edition means advanced placement edition, that's a dead giveaway. It's a high school book. So just want to be clear so people. Brandon, great question. Said, is there less risk with high school books versus college books? Like definitely when considering counterfeits. You want to go for that one, Victor?
Yeah, there definitely is. And it's one of the reasons why I've kind of picked this niche to kind of be in. If you followed me for quite a long time or quite a while, I've talked about high school books as my number one sourcing way. And it's because there's just a lot of positives to sourcing high school books. One of them being is that there's very few counterfeit books in high school type of books, because most of the time it's the high school, like the school districts buying books from the publisher, and that's how most kids are getting their books. I mean, that's how most high school books are happening, right? It's the high school purchasing from the publisher, and there's really no other supply opportunities for a counterfeit company to sell their books, right? Because that school district is only going to buy it from the publisher, and so there is when you go and check all. I have about 3,500 high school books that I'm tracking, and I've found a total of 3 high school books that come back as potentially counterfeit. So the vast majority of high school books are not counterfeit likely, and that's one of my biggest points. Also, most of the time, most of the mega sellers don't also play in this playground. They go look for college books or books that are much more in demand than high school books. So that's another thing I really don't have to necessarily worry about. Plus, it's also immune mostly to newer editions. So, for instance, more than likely, this book is 2,000 days old. There's probably a few editions past this, but you have to go back to like high school days. Your books are really old, right? They're like 10, 15, 20 years old. So that's where we're getting most of our customer base from. These are school districts that still are having to keep these older edition books in stock or with them, and year in and year out, they're having to buy them for their students who destroy the book, during the school year, and they're buying replacements. And so that's why books like this I'm really interested in high school books, right? So again, a great high school book here. There are tons of high school books that have the same type of patterns, and I'm definitely all in high school books. So
Yeah, absolutely.
all right, so let's go ahead and click on maybe one more high school book, Joji, and then go back to our
Let's do
slides.
one. Yeah, we'll do one more. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's look at this high school book. Nowhere near as in demand as say those college books we had, but there's still a good amount of demand where you could probably buy 1, maybe 2 copies of this book. It's at $2.42 plus $4 shipping, so $6 altogether. And you can easily see the shoulders here. We're at $35, $34, right? Those shoulders happen here, and this is the head you can see up here. That's like the bonus if you ever are actually able to sell it for like say $50, but more than likely, more realistically, sell it for $35. So buy this book for $6, sell it for $35. And again, I would probably, and yes, the use offer count is higher. Again, that's probably where I would kind of hone into the shoulder price is probably where my max would be this year. So yeah, I would buy that book and sell it for, like I said, $6. Well, buy it for $6 and sell it for 36.
Yeah. Very cool.
All right, so we're gonna close out that part, and we're gonna go back to our slides. We got basically two more. We have some bookkeeping tips. So when you want to look at your orders, you can, on the slides, you can go and look at this link, and basically you can request all of the orders you've had in the last year, and Amazon will send you those in a spreadsheet. You can also, there's a few Chrome extensions, one of them being the Amazon order history report. And basically you download this and it will pull all the reports, pull all the purchases you had, and they say, you can pick between 3 months, 6 months, a year. And so there's the link there. And then if you have any type of like eBay purchases, you can also, there's a Chrome extension which will pull, again, different periods of your purchase history. So it's a good way to like keep track of what books you've purchased and be able to put them all in a spreadsheet so that you can then track how much you actually sold them for, a few months down the road. So that's some good bookkeeping tips. And then basically kind of a recap and our pro scaling tips. Just a kind of a recap of what the things we talked about up there. I think one of the things first up is, getting a prep center. Wouldn't you say, Joji, would you say that a prep center is probably a huge thing?
Huge.
It gets you scaling, right?
Yeah, it's not one thing to take away is it's way easier than you would think. And once you set it up, you're like, wow, that was easy. So I've got an interview on my YouTube channel, Shanna Man. I recommend Central Virginia Prep because I use them. I don't get paid anything to send our customers. Picture uses Little Owl and also yep. And also yep. And so he recommends that. He doesn't get paid to send people to Frank. Those are just people we crowdsource. There's a lot of people who use them. So why waste your time trying to find some other prep center when there's already people vetted for you? So go ahead and work with that. But yeah, again, you guys have two resources. You got time, you got capital. If you've got less capital, probably prep your own books. And you'll be able to squeeze a little extra profit out of it. You might be working at $20 an hour prepping your books, which in this case, if you have less capital, is great because you're conserving capital so you can buy more books. As the snowball starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it's going to be harder for you to send out 50 books a week, 100 books a week, 250 books a month or whatever, right? So that start leveraging your capital, spend an extra $2 per book, and also make sure you include that in your buy cost, right? So you don't get like unexpectedly, you're like, wow, why am I not as profitable in this book? So, utilize your leverage your capital more than your time as you get moving on. But yeah, really good point there. It's gonna be way easier to get a prep center set up than you think. Source solely from Amazon, eBay. Just makes things super simple, super easy. You don't have to deal with returns on weird websites that they may or may not actually oblige, or they might not actually honor their commitments. Amazon, eBay, easy returns. Do that. Daily book goals. And source books throughout the year, right?
Exactly. I was about to ask you, Doji, how many books do you try to source a day, or what do we recommend?
I try to do at least.
For me, go ahead.
I try to do at least 10 a day. What about you?
Yeah. Same thing. No matter what day it is, I'm at least trying to buy 10 books a day because it makes the whole process much easier, right? Because there's at least 10 easy books to buy a day. And if I'm able to do that, it's much easier than say 40 books in one day. I'd rather buy 40 books a week. I try to buy 10 books a day.
Yeah. Good question, Brandon. For beginners, how many should we buy? Should you buy 10? I would say think about how much capital you have or are willing to spend, and then try to allocate that so you have some runway. So what you don't want to do is just spend $3,000 in one day, because then you'll be sitting on the sidelines going, oh, wow, that was a great deal. Can't buy it. That was a great deal. Can't buy it. Yeah. So what I would say is if you got $3,000, give yourself some runway. Go, okay, I want to have 30 days of consistent buying. So that means I have to spend $100 a day. If I'm spending $100 a day, you probably won't know what your average buy cost is yet because you haven't actually spent money on books. But you could say maybe instead of a daily book goal, you have a daily spend goal. My goal is to spend $100 a day on the absolute best books I could buy. That means you're going to be leveraging your time more than your capital. So you might spend 2 hours finding $100 in buy cost. just because you have limited capital. But I would say give yourself some runway, and maybe in the beginning, you don't want to, if you could start in the beginning with a little bit more purchasing in the beginning and then make sure that it's consistent from there on, that would probably be better. So give yourself a little bit of a big push, but then make sure you have runway, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and a few other ones here, right? We don't necessarily have to cover them all because we're already running short on time. But source wide instead of deep. We kind of talked about that already. But when you are limited in your capital, you want to buy one book of each instead of 10 books and then none of no other books. Basically, you want to be one copy of each book is probably the way to go when you are first starting out. And again, even for me, I'm not trying to buy more than 5% of the market.
Yep. I love this next one. Don't buy hope, guy. There's 95 million books out there. Don't buy hope. You're buying data, right? We're essentially buying and selling data, right? So your profits are made on the purchase, not on the sale. You make your money when you buy the book. You don't make your money when you sell the book. When you buy the book, you decided to put your money into an asset, something that's going to hold more value than what you were able to buy it for.
Yeah, because I'm hearing from people that like, oh, the repricers aren't great and stuff like that. It's not your repricer's fault. You paid too much for the book. If you're not able to make profit off of it, you didn't do your analysis the right way, or something happened. But but it's not your repricer. The profit happens when you purchase the book, not when you sell it.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we can say. Yeah, acceptable books. People always ask, so who to buy acceptable books from? I would say easily buy acceptable books from sellers with 96% feedback or higher, and usually Goodwills as well. There's some Goodwills that have a little bit lower feedback, but Goodwills, people with higher than 96%, I would say probably don't even second guess it. Probably just buy it. Understand, 1 out of 10 times, 2 out of 10 times, whatever it might be, might be a book that actually is unsellable. Get a return. Most cases it's gonna be fine. Going back to Gary's example of an amazing deal, guys got 65%. Again, it comes down to your risk tolerance. Do you want to try to play the game or not? Normally I do if it's an amazing deal, but that's your decision, right? I can't make that decision for you guys. So let's see what else.
I think the last two are really key here, and then we can so build a reliable evergreen source of books, right? So every book that you have sold, you probably want to keep that in your tracking list, right? Because you've sold it, you know how much you sold it for. It's a book that you have bought and sold profitably. So it's a book you want to keep with you, and it helps you grow as a bookseller. The more books that you feel that you definitely want in your inventory, the more trackable books, the more books that you have that you are interested in selling, the larger of a bookseller you'll become.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to go back to that first point of the prep center, your highest ROI is going to be when you're sourcing. That is going to be your highest value add. If I were to take every single little part of this job and lay it out line by dollar per hour, sourcing is by far the highest. Like everything else is significantly below. It's like not even close. So the more that you guys can shift towards only buying and not having to prep books, not having to, to do all this other stuff that's not buying, the better it's going to be for you. And it's not going to be perfect in the beginning. I think that's important to understand. It's in a learning curve. There's experience to it. Even though you've learned a lot of amazing things about Keepa, you guys are still going to make mistakes. Mistakes is part of the learning process. If you're not making mistakes, then you're not really actively learning, right? Even I, to this day, still buy some books and I'm like, man, I learned something new about this book. So just, don't beat yourself up. Just know that learning is part of the process. Making mistakes is part of the process. And more importantly, when you do make mistakes, you should really think about why you made the mistake and what you can learn from and what you can do next time to not repeat the mistake. And if you can do that effectively, you'll have these little marginal improvements over time and you'll become a way better bookseller, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. And, Victor and I think about this long term. I've been doing this for 7 years. You've been doing it for 5 years. I don't think Amazon's going anywhere. I don't think selling books in Amazon's going anywhere. I think this is something that could easily be a profitable side hustle where you make an extra $500,000 a month, like easily. Now, a lot of you might want to replace your income. It's going to take more time to get there, but you're building a snowball. And so some of you, it's going to take longer to build a snowball because you might find it harder to read Keepa graphs. You might have less capital, but there's an amazing opportunity and we're really excited to share it with you guys there. So
yeah, again, the highest ROI is when you're sourcing. I think that's key, right? So whenever you're doing something else, know that you're not optimizing your time, because the best thing you can be doing is sourcing. And I think that's also why sourcing books online is the best way to make money, right? Because like you could do that thrifting model, but what you're not realizing is you're spending a ton of time driving to that place, scanning those books, putting them, lugging them back in your car and driving back. That's a lot of time that you could have been online sourcing books at a much higher ROI than even that model. And it's a good thing to put in your head when you're sourcing. Know that this is the best opportunities you have for your business is when you're sourcing. And so try to outsource your prep, and also the pricing structure you have, or the when you put your min price and your max price, make sure those are in line, and so that the book basically will sell sometime in the next 3 to 6 months, so you don't necessarily have to come back to it every couple of days to see where it is. I think these are just really great pro tips. And yeah, I mean, we conclude those slides now, and I'm going to come back and close out this chart and kind of go back and see what type of offer we're going to be offering you guys.
Yeah. Okay. So let me go ahead and present my screen now. So we know you guys' time is valuable. We've got about 4 minutes left here. So one thing that we want to let you guys know is that, and maybe Victor, you can put this in the, this link in the description. So BookMine was not the focus of what today was about. Today was trying to get you guys from $0 to $10,000 of book sales, trying to get you guys buy box eligible, trying to make you guys realize when a book is a good buy and when it's not a good buy, seasonal books, learning how to use Keepa to source books. So BookMine was not the focus of today. As you guys get to a point where you have more capital spend, BookMine might become a software that you decide to use. It's a software that Victor and I built to try to make really smart decisions about what books on Amazon right now are very likely to be profitable. And then you can comb through these, have a lot of potential, really great potential leads that you can then go and buy. And so this is another way for you guys to save time in the future. But for those of you who did sign up for the 2-day OA book boot camp, we essentially said, do you guys also want a BookMine training? Because we do have BookMine members and we have people who are at that stage. If you're interested and you didn't yet sign up for the BookMine boot camp going down on Monday, make sure you take that same link from before, the same one you used to sign up for this 2-day workshop, and make sure you select the button that you're interested in attending that, so we can send you a link to go to that. Now, we want to give you guys a special offer. If you came to this, there's going to be a link to this, and Victor will put it in the chat, where you guys can test drive out BookMine for a few days. We're not going to let it.
I just did. Yeah.
Okay. We're not going to open it for a long time because, we do have BookMine members who are actually paying us to use this, that see the value in it, but we just want to show you what is possible once you guys get there. And so you guys can go around and play with it. But more importantly, on Monday, we'll go ahead and show you how to use this. Like, so for example, you've got book types. You can say, let's look at high school books right now. You can say, let's look at only college books, all year round books, winter books, and you can search for books. There's a lot that's going to go down in that training, but definitely at least test drive it out and play around with it. But with that said, again, we have about 2 minutes left. Go subscribe to the BookMine YouTube channel, even if you don't ever plan to use BookMine, because again, we have a playlist called the BookMine Academy. It's the way that we're essentially, so it's right here, BookMine Academy. It's the way that we're going to show you guys in greater detail how to actually make really smart purchases. Even if, again, you don't plan on being a BookMine member, it's going to be a huge value add. And then lastly, we did want to give one last parting gift as a giveaway. So I'll go ahead and put this link in the chat. This link should actually work here. So go ahead and open that link. Essentially, put your first name in. I guess, let's see. It's here. Victor, can you edit this as well? Let's see. I guess.
What happened?
I guess someone. Okay, I guess people could edit this thing. I thought that they could actually. Okay, let me do this on my other account then. So give me.
Yeah. No, we're good. I mean, we're giving out a ton of value here, right? Those books that we just shared, it was like 30 books in there, and each one of those books are definitely $10 to $15 in profit that each one of you guys could purchase and sell. So I suggest you guys right after this, go in there and look at all those books and buy as many of those as you guys have the capital to do. But besides that, yeah, on Monday we're having our class on BookMine, and that will be specifically on BookMine. It'll kind of go over those same type of graphs, but showing you how just powerful it is. And we sent you the link there just a couple of minutes ago. if you haven't signed up and you're interested in it. And again, we also have BookMine. It's currently open, like, and you guys can use it and start buying some books from it. So I think that I saw a question in here asking, when will eBay be added? And that's a good question. Just in case you guys don't know, actually me and Joji are the developers of BookMine. So you're actually asking the developers how long it's going to take, right?
Yeah.
We're thinking sometime probably late March, beginning of April is probably when we're going to stick eBay in there. We just added the used price slider. That is definitely something soon we're going to add to BookMine. I mean, it's going to add a whole new avenue, right? It's going to be like 48 million books is what eBay has. So definitely pretty exciting there. And so, yeah, we're excited about having that.
Yep. So that's the use price slider. So we got a lot of updates. And we've got like a year planned out, Victor, with updates that we're having, and it's just gonna take a while. Software takes a really long time. In order to do that. But let's go ahead and do this giveaway here. So essentially, the way that this works is just go ahead and put your first name and your last name in, and we'll just do a random number generator. So use the link that I just posted in the chat. You can only sign up one time, but essentially, the way that it's going to work is I'll just do a random number generator. So I'll give you guys like another minute or so to sign up, and then we'll get started with it.
Yeah, so just got a question about BookMine. Basically, is there a way to make visited links happen, right? So we don't necessarily on our software have that ability. We didn't put it in there. We didn't want to track your cookies, right? So in order to not track your cookies, we took that option off. So basically, you can add. We have a few videos on the BookMine YouTube channel that have a Chrome extension, so I'll show you whether or not you've recently visited that Keepa link before, and so that you won't necessarily see that again. But on the software itself, we didn't add that feature, because then we would have to ask you permission to track cookies and things like that. And I think that's kind of not the best. It's kind of a slimier way to be a programmer, because then you could start selling selling that data to other companies and stuff, and we just didn't want to go down that route. So that's why you basically just download a third-party app, and you'll get that. You basically get the same functions. All right, Joji, how many do we have? 20 something already? Yeah, so you're on mute, Joji. Can you hear me? You're on mute.
Oh, you can see my screen now?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay,
yeah.
So we got about 21 people that have signed up here, and I think everyone's had enough time if they want to sign up. So I'm going to go random number generator 1 through 21, and whoever it lands on when I click generate is going to be the person that wins the 30-minute one-on-one giveaway with Victor or me. And all you'd have to do if you win is just email us. You can just email me, joji@bookmine.co. So that's going to be my email. So with that said, let's click generate, and the number is actually 8. So the winner is going to be Jessica. So Jessica, if you could just go ahead and send me an email, joji@bookmine.co. Congratulations, and you can have a 30 Victor or I. So hopefully that's really cool. Hopefully you guys knew that was fair. That was a random number generator. So yeah,
that's pretty.
I do have
cool.
I do have to go because my like I said, I have a wife and a 1-year-old son. I'm a high school chemistry teacher, so I'm very busy. And I know you guys are busy as well. So I'm glad that everyone came here. Thank you so much, guys. And let's go, guys. Let's go.
We'll see most of you guys back on Monday. So